Welcome to Coffee and Conversations, mini episodes by victims and villains. I am your co-host, Captain Nostalgia, and I am joined by a voice that you guys haven't heard in a while, Mr. Brandon Riff Daddy Miller.
Salutations, my people.
It's so good to be podcasting with you again.
Yeah, man. Last thing I did was Batman and Robin, and this year I wanted to do more, and we're like, hey, let's do more DC stuff, and here we are doing more DC stuff because DC stuff's cool.
Yes, once upon a time, we here at Victims and Villains used to pride ourselves on covering every DC animated movie that was coming out, and somewhere along the way, that journey just kind of dropped the ball, and we've had a lot of people come and go as far as creative voices, and Brandon and I have just, I think it's safe to say that like me and you have just had this like passion for what the DC animated movies have been doing over the last 5 or 6 years, and this has always kind of been a cornerstone for our like movie watching, is like if DC animated puts out something new, we're gonna watch it. And I'm a couple movies behind. I'm using this week actually to kind of catch up in my spare time, but you are almost all up to date too. Am I understanding that correct?
Yes, I have not seen like the Deathstroke and the Constantine movie, but other than that, I've seen everything up to what we're talking about today.
So we are talking about Batman Soul of the Dragon, and one thing that I have to say that I really appreciate about these DC movies are they might not always be the best movies, but I appreciate and respect the chances and the risks that the filmmakers and storytellers are willing to take these characters into something like Old England, like when I say Old England, like 1800s England for like Gotham by Gaslight, and even doing something like Gotham Knight, which went to these like top, just really respected directors and animators in the world of anime, and had them interpret Batman back in, I think it was like 2010. But Batman Soul of the Dragon is an interesting film to talk about because it interprets a lot of the Batman mythos, I feel like, in ways that we've never seen them before in this medium. And I'm excited to kind of talk about some of these things. But we were joking around before we started recording, and I think we kind of both fell on like similar playing fields, where this is a movie where things happen. There's cool things that I like about this movie, but this movie I think ultimately just kind of fell flat for me. This is one of the more duller animated movies that DC's done.
Yeah, I mean, you told me you didn't watch the trailer, just saw some pictures. I saw the trailer and I was just like, I don't know. And then, like, into the movie, it's I don't know. It's definitely not their worst, but it's not close to their best at all. Like, not even close.
All right, so side question real quick. Before we get into like general thoughts and like spoilers, what would you say is their worst film that they've ever done?
Let me take a cheap plug for Letterboxd real quick and go to them, because I have it logged in my Letterboxd.
Okay. Well, while you pull up your Letterboxd account, I'm going to throw in my nomination for Superman versus the Elite. That movie was so boring and so dull. Gotta give it to that one. I do not like that movie under any circumstances.
That one was pretty low for me, but my worst is Batman and Harley Quinn. That movie was so bad.
Ooh, yeah, that was a pretty bad one.
Like, looking at it down here, it just gives me flashbacks of this horrible romance of Harley and Dick, and
Oof.
no.
Yeah. Well, so what were your general thoughts on this? Like, I know we've kind of teased it, but kind of coming out of these, what were your general thoughts, spoiler free?
I'd say it for. I guess I'd say for like the casual Batman fan, like maybe like a young child, is a really fun movie. It had a really cool theme. I mean, the 70s kung fu, like James Bond thing, is always a cool thing for people. Like I said earlier, it wasn't a bad movie, but it wasn't great. But it was just okay, you know. Like it's something that you could put on just to pass time, something to put on in class to keep kids calm. I mean, it was just a fun movie that didn't really hit home where it should have, but it has some cool parts.
Yeah, this is not a. Also, this feels mismarketed because this is not a Batman movie under any circumstances. This is a Richard Dragon movie. And I think if I remember correctly, Richard Dragon is actually the first character that we meet in this movie. He has that like suave James Bond intro where he's like, just Dragon. Richard Dragon.
Yeah, it threw me off because I was like, are we really doing this right now? Really? I was hoping for more of a Bruce Wayne, but that didn't happen.
No, and so I guess like there's no real way to kind of get into this movie without jumping into spoilers. That's my general thoughts, is that this is not a Batman movie whatsoever. There's a lot of redeemable things about this movie, but it's not a Batman movie whatsoever. Before we get into kind of talking about it, did you catch the Arrow connection?
You mean Ricardo Diaz?
No.
No, they're not.
So in this film, there's like a gang, I guess, that like ultimately ends up kind of like training together in flashbacks, and then they reunite. That is Richard Dragon, Bruce Wayne, Batman, Lady Shiva, and Bronze Tiger. Bronze Tiger has also been a predominant voice and character within Arrow, and Michael J. White actually reprised his role from Arrow in this movie.
Oh no, I did not catch on to that, actually.
Well, it's hard to, because like his like voice inflection isn't the same that he gave on Arrow. Like in Arrow, it's a little bit more like gruff and like a little bit more rough, whereas in this one it's a little bit like feels kind of like something you would come across with like Scooby-Doo. Like this film animation wise feels like Scooby-Doo. It's like 70s Hanna-Barbera, and Erica even pointed it out when we were watching it. She's like, this feels like the animation just feels like so classic, it's so nostalgic. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about this film. But with the way that he delivers his voice for Bronze Tiger, you don't have that like really dark, angsty portrayal that we got in Arrow, because it would be out of tone for this movie. So he kind of goes for this almost like blaxploitation kind of vibe. And that's kind of how they wrote the character as well.
Oh yeah, dude. We mentioned the Scooby-Doo vibes. Like that's what I was thinking too. I was thinking this was definitely like a straight to VHS Cartoon Network movie for sure. And then like Bronze Tiger, they're like because like he totally gave off more like that 70s cool dude vibe than his vibe in Arrow. So that's something you would definitely miss if you didn't really know before going into it.
Also, I don't know. I really, out of everything that goes on in this movie, this is the thing that like I really wanted to get your opinion on and kind of what you understood from it. Not a Part Bat is such a huge part in this film, And for those of you guys that may or may not know, Nana Parbat is the home of the League of Assassins and the League of Shadows, depending on which continuity you're looking at. It's Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul, like the Lazarus Pit. Like, that's where not all of that takes place in Nana Parbat. That's where so much of Arrow's mythos came from. Batman Begins, The Dark Knight Rises. Like, Nana Parbat is a huge part of the Batman mythos, and it is traded in this film to be a monk monastery, and it's like typical, like what you would expect from like a monk. It's like it's a very bright and very colorful, very vibrant place, and very peaceful. I don't know how I felt about it. I thought that out of everything that goes on in this movie, that was the most interesting decision they could have made, was to make Nana Parbat a monk monastery.
Yeah, that's so weird to me because, like, I was like, what am I watching? Am I watching a Batman movie, or am I watching freaking, like, Mortal Kombat movie where Liu Kang goes to the monks where he fights Shang Tsung? Like, this, I was like, what's going on? And it's like, that's not what Nana Parbat is at all. And it was just so weird that they went that route. But I guess they're trying to match, like, that 70s kung fu feel, I guess, because I know, like, I'm not very, like, enlightened or like knowledgeable in 70s films, like action and comedy or the kung fu, but I kept getting that vibe that that's what they're going for, like that 70s action karate kung fu vibe. So they had to do something different, I guess, to get that vibe. I don't know. That's how I felt about it.
I kind of would have liked them to just have named it something generic that you would find in like 70s kung fu instead of naming it Nana Parbat. I think that's kind of really what bothered me about that. As a comic book fan, I just couldn't make the separation between what I had been conditioned to see of this like bloody, just, you know, thirsty, you know, we're gonna burn the world down, almost like their theology almost is like lines up with Thanos's, where we're gonna wipe out half of humanity to save humanity, and that's kind of their thing. And it's really just weird to kind of see like a bubble bath version of that. A bubblegum version is what I meant to say, of like that killer society. It seemed to fit, but I think that I would have preferred it just for them to kind of make that separation to where they didn't call it Nana Parbat, they just called it something generic, or I don't know, call it actually something that like exists, where it's like an actual like monk monastery, like name it after something in real world.
Could have called it Shadow Island or something.
Yeah,
Assassin
like
Island.
that would have been
Fantasy Island.
That would have been so much better than Nana Parbat. But so it's interesting. The entire narrative revolves around Richard Dragon having to kind of recruit all of these people that he used to be at Nana Parbat with, in order to take down this organization that has found a way to infiltrate they've gotten the tools necessary to infiltrate like an otherworldly like spirits, I guess, is like the best way that I would put that. And among them are Bruce Wayne, who's very timid to be Batman. Like, how did you feel about that? Like, him not really wanting to be Batman, or like shy about being like the Caped Crusader.
Yeah, it seemed like he was very like reluctant to do it. Like, that's one thing I took away from this being a Batman movie, because he didn't want to be Batman. And one thing I thought was really weird is how he just like made it so obvious to Richard and everybody else that he was Batman. You know, like it wasn't like this big secret like it normally is. He was like, yeah, I'll wear the mask. And it's like, I don't know, it's like he's doing something he doesn't want to do, and he's making it it obvious, and that's kind of a problem.
See, I didn't interpret it that way. Richard just happened to be at the same place where the Batman is first revealed, and he trained with him. So he's going to know his style intimately and how Bruce fights as Batman. I mean, you can't make that separation because in Batman mythos, that's the whole reason Bruce goes to Nana Parbat is to learn how to be a very hand-to-hand combat master, basically. And so Richard couldn't make the divorce between Bruce Wayne isn't Batman and stuff like that. So, like, I think the first time that you see Batman fight in front of Richard Dragon, like, he just automatically makes that distinction that, oh, these are one and the same. And so I can understand like the hesitation around not wanting to do it around Lady Shiva, because Lady Shiva in this film is made out to be the queen of Gotham's underworld, which I don't know about you, man. Lady Shiva is not only one of my favorite DC characters, but she is the hands down the best part in this entire movie.
Yeah, I thought she was too. Like her character really stood out the most to me. Just how much of a badass she was. Like when they first introduced her, you know, I'm just like, yeah, that's it. That's the icing for this movie. Like the cake is okay, but the icing was really good, and it was Shiva flavored. That sounded weird, but
well,
yeah,
she had some of the best parts in there. Where I think one of my favorite moments is where she's like at this like fight club, and she's the ringleader of it, and the winner or the loser, I can't remember which one, basically was like, oh, I want a rematch, and she was like, well, I'll take you on, and she basically fights the entire thing with one hand behind her back the entire time. She'll bring out wrists and hands when it's necessary, but she beats the guy like single-handedly. And it's one of the best moments in the entire movie. And then there's a flashback sequence where she has to prove herself to her, I don't know what to, like, classmates, monkmates, I don't know. But like she does it with one hand, with one single finger. And it was one of the most satisfying moments in this entire movie.
Yeah, that was really cool. She was the winner of this movie for sure. That was my favorite part. Was just her.
Also, she was voiced by Kelly Hu once again is a Arrow connection. She played China White.
Okay, I didn't catch that at all, but that's freaking cool because I love China White.
When they were doing like the intro with like all the actors and stuff, and I saw Kelly Hu's name, I was like, oh man, please be reprising China White, please. But I was just as satisfied with Lady Shiva. I really enjoyed Lady Shiva in this movie so freaking much. And I will also say that I think that another part of this movie that I really liked, character-wise, was also Bronze Tiger. I think that he had some of the best moments. I think so. Present day, he's kind of he's a dojo master. I'm not really entirely sure what he practices. I think the sign says karate, but there is a moment between him and a kid, and the kid's like, you know, is just really kind of going through like depression, and Bronze Tiger basically gives him this power talk about how he has value and how he has worth, and that he's not this version of himself that he is imagining it to be. And it's one of the more tender, it might even be the most tender moment in this entire film. But that really made me really like his character, and I really liked what Michael J. White brought to the character in Arrow. And but I think that this is kind of a different side of that character that we weren't able to see in Arrow that I really appreciated.
Oh yeah, man, he had some really good one-liners that I enjoyed. I can't remember any off the top of my head right now, but I know there was a spot at the end that I laughed at. It was like I said earlier, he really brought like that cool dude, like that cool like fighter dude vibe to the team, to the movie, and I think that could hook any kid for sure. Like I keep going back to a kid because I think this movie is suited better for kids than adults, but that's a different story. But yeah, dude, I really liked his character a lot.
How did you feel about the moment where him and Bruce bonded in the fighting over rice in the flashback?
Oh yeah, that was really funny. Because I remember there was one point where they had to someone had to sacrifice themselves at the end, and Bronze Tiger was like, "Whoa, where's Rice Boy?" That was really funny. But yeah, that was pretty good. I did enjoy that a lot.
And so, how did you feel about this story overall? Because it's told in this very non-linear storyline where you have the present day, where you have Richard Dragon recruiting all of these former classmates, and then you kind of get to see the backstory about how all of the people met. That I thought was really, really fascinating. I liked those flashback sequences a little bit more than I did the present day sequences.
Yeah, I did too. You keep making the Arrow connections. That's a very Arrow thing to do too, is flashbacks and putting things together. And there's a lot of times where sometimes the flashbacks in the episodes are buried in the present day stuff in the episodes. And I think in this movie, I definitely enjoyed most of that better. But I really did like getting to see firsthand how everything played into what ended up happening, especially with their master and everything. I really didn't know who the villain would be in this movie. I didn't think it'd be that sweet old man, but it was. And
I called that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just thought there'd be something deeper, but I mean, it is what it is, and it's one of those things. But yeah, man, I liked how they pieced it together. The flashbacks really did do its part, and they did the story well that they're trying to put together.
I think for me, the antagonist element of this movie in Copper, I think is the villain that we got in this movie. He is if I remember correctly, a Justice Society of America villain, and he's made his debut in 1975 or 1976. But I really liked the idea that you have this prophecy and this quote-unquote chosen one, and they basically groomed him to be this arch villain his entire life. And I love the idea and the concept of that, and it was such a poor execution. I feel like this movie would have worked so much better as either a 3 or 4 part miniseries that HBO Max threw together, or a 2-part movie similarly to The Dark Knight Returns, because I feel like the film that we got was attempting to have all of these ideas and just mushed them together, and that's kind of really what really fell short for this movie for me. I really think that they had a really good, solid idea for a villain and wasted him here.
Yeah, I agree with you on all that for sure. Because, I guess the reason why I didn't see him as a villain, I expected more, and that's what we got. And it was a good idea, but it just, the end result was just it could have been better. But I like your idea with them doing it as a series or whatever. That probably would have been a lot better to give you more backstory and give you more build.
I am sorry. I got my DC villains actually mixed up. It is Cobra that he plays, and Cobra was a villain that made his debut in February of 1976. and he was created by Jack Kirby, the same man that created the Fourth World, a la Apocalypse, Dark Side, The New Gods. So just that's a sweet little touch right there. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like so much of this movie, the villain of it felt really anticlimactic because we had spent so long with going through all these bad guys and all these goons, similarly to how they did in Deadpool, where Deadpool is just trying to get to Francis and is going through all these goons and all these henchmen, and they're doing the same thing here for Cobra. And ultimately, what I think just fell really short for me was the fact that he was so easily defeated. Like, he had been anticipating... They really built up an anticipation around him as a villain, and then just threw it away at a moment's notice.
Yeah, it was like, here it is. All right, it's gone. That's it.
Yeah, and then they have this like moment where it's the tunnel that leads into like another world. We see it in a flashback, and I like how the flashbacks in present day go hand in hand with their story. Like, they're two cohesive things that are a mirror of one another. And by the time that you kind of get into the end of this movie, I called the Master O-Sensei coming back. I don't know about you, but I knew the moment that door opened, I was like, it's going to be O-Sensei, and they're going to have this like heartfelt struggle of the heart, or they're going to have this, I don't know what I'm trying to say, they're going to have this emotional battle coming back and forth, and you just never kind of saw it. Like, there was going to be one of them that was going to realize that this isn't actually my master, and of course it's Richard Dragon, who this movie should have been about. It should have been called Richard Dragon, Soul of the Dragon.
Or it could have been like DC Legends, Soul of the Dragon, or something like that.
Would have been a better name. But how did you feel about this ending where we get into these four heroes, they walk into the other realm, and they're basically in like the 70s version of like DC's hell? And
yeah, they're like in DC's version of, or 70s DC's version of Mortal Kombat's like Outer World, essentially. And the ending was pretty cool, man. I mean, I'll be honest too, like it wasn't enough to like keep me like glued in, because I don't know, just everything was playing into each other. I don't know. I expected something cooler to happen than what did, and I feel like it fell flat, but at the same time, like, it did its job of what it was trying to purvey as a story.
See, I'm going to disagree. I felt like by the time that we got to the end, and I was like, at this point, I was invested for them to go fight demons. I was invested to see what the other side of this world that they had spent the last hour and a half building up was going to be about. And then they just cut to credits, and I was like, you just blew the best thing you had going for you in this movie. And what was your end goal here? And I don't know, for me, I wanted more of this, and to give that cliffhanger, which is one of the best qualities of this movie, it's another lackluster thing about this movie for me.
Like a 5-minute montage of them fighting demons would have helped. Like maybe a few minutes of the demons and them getting out, and then kind of what they're doing. But just the way it ended like that was the thing. Is like I don't know. It just sucked it out of me. I mean, I'll be honest, just transparent here. I was over this movie like an hour in, like honestly, but like I don't know, man. It's just like I was expecting so much more. And like you said, I got to the coolest part, and it just ends And it's like, okay, well, you have something here that could be really cool. Are you going to give another movie, or are you going to just let it be that and nothing happened?
Yeah, like even like a montage like throughout the credits, like some of them will do. Even like still frames of like pow, or something like that would have been cool. But I don't know, man. Fun fact about the Lady Shiva actress Kelly Hu, though, that I want to throw in before we give our ratings. This is not the first time that she has actually voiced that character. She also voiced her in Batman Arkham Origins.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that was her.
So, all right. Well, we're about to... All right, let's go to Rorschach ratings. 0 to 5, halves being allowed. Where did Batman Soul of the Dragon land for you?
I'm going to go with a 2.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm going to go a 2.5. I really enjoyed the animation in this movie, and Lady Shiva really was some of the best parts in this movie. I won't say that this is at the bottom of the barrel for DC animated movies, but it's not one of the better attempts that they've made.
Oh, no, yeah, it's definitely not their worst. I mean, it's nothing compared to Batman and Harley Quinn. It's way better. Better than Superman vs. Elite, too. It didn't have, what's-his-face with his little British punk jacket. But, yeah, I mean, my main thing from this is that I really want more cool things you can show kids, because I used to work in a school, so it's like I want more superhero things you can show kids. Like this movie, was so great to show a kid, and I'm glad the movie like this exists. I hope they do more like this. But as far as like a fan and it being like a DC animated movie that like in a genre that I love, like the DC animated movies, it fell flat for me. And it has parts, it has cool moments with Bronze Tiger and Shiva. And the animation was really cool. It was really nostalgic. But other than that, it just felt super flat.
I think this movie had so much potential, and it never really rises to that potential. Given some of these character dynamics and arcs and interactions, and just this movie at times can feel overwhelming from everything that they're trying to do.
Yeah, man, I definitely agree with that. It just, like you said, it has potential, and just it couldn't get above. It just can't get stuck there.
All right. Well, much like Bronze Tiger, we just want to remind you that you have value and that you have worth. Thank you guys for listening to this review of Batman Soul of the Dragon, which is now available on all digital platforms wherever you guys are. Get your digital movies, but most importantly, the reason we make this content is so that you can know about your value and your worth. And if you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. There are 132 suicides as of this recording. And when we look at international numbers, we see that there are 800,000 successful suicides that take place annually. And that equates to roughly about one suicide every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, we encourage you guys to please reach out. Call the suicide lifeline at 1-800-273-8255, or you can also text help to 741-741, or go to victimsandvillains.net/hope, all of which are going to be in the show notes wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. So once again, we encourage you guys to please stay with us. You guys can go to victimsandvillains.net, where you guys can find links to all of our social media, which include Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and Letterboxd. You guys can also get past episodes and also check out our main show, Victims and Villains, and our other spinoff, the Cage Corner podcast, and get movie reviews from Brandon and myself and more talented writers, and most importantly, those suicide prevention resources. But you guys can find me on Letterboxd at Captain Nostalgia. Where can people find you online, sir?
Find me at Twitter at Brendan W. Miller, Instagram at The Changing of Times. And be sure to take off work for the Snyder Cut.
Oh, I already planned on it.
Same.
All right. Well, that's going to be it. We're going to go grab some coffee, and we'll see you guys this Friday to talk about Judas and the Black Messiah over at Victims and Villains. Have a good one.